So I want to tell you a little story I heard. Um, there was a priest and a rabbi on a plane. And the priest leans over to the rabbi and he says, "So, Rabbi, is it true that you can't eat pork in religion?" The rabbi nodded his head and he says, "Yes, Father, that's true. We do not eat pork in the most religious of the Jewish traditions." The priest leans back, goes back to his book. A few moments later, the rabbi leans over to the priest and he says, "Father, is it true that you have to stay celibate your entire life?" And the priest says, "Yes, that is true." "Ah." And the priest says, "Say, Rabbi, have you ever, had a little pork? Snuck a little pork just to see what it's like?" And the rabbi goes, "Yeah. Yes, when I was very young, I did have a little pork. Yeah. So I know what it's like. That smell of bacon." He says, "Well, then while we're on the subject, Father, did you ever take of the flesh, as they say?" And he goes, looks around, make sure nobody's listening. He says, "Yes, Rabbi. When I was very, very young, I did have a little taste of the flesh, you might say." Rabbi goes, "Oh, yeah, okay." They both lean back, they both get back to their books. A few moments later, the rabbi leans over to the priest and he goes, "Yeah, better than a ham sandwich, isn't it?" So we have all kinds of rules and regulations in our lives. We have certain rules and regulations that we were taught to follow, that we've decided to follow, and then when we realize they no longer serve us, especially when we're adults, especially when we're teenagers is when it really starts happening, we step into, because we need that support. We don't want to just live a life of poo-pooing things. We need that foundation of the divine. So we step back into the divine for wisdom on how we go past, how we bust through, soar, and zoom from this idea, this rule, this regulation that was there. Ernest Holmes said in our Declaration of Principles, which we will talk about one of these weeks, he said, "We believe the ultimate goal of life is the complete emancipation from all discord of every nature, and that it is sure to be attained by all." And that includes some of the rules and regulations, like the priest and the rabbi we're talking about. Now, in the unity tradition, and also a New Thought organization, they say in their principles, our purpose is to express our divine potential. The more we awaken to our divine nature, the more fully God expresses in and through our lives. We are here to set a positive example and be a role model for others. We are here to make the world a better place. So it's not only for us personally, but it's for us in the greater us, in the one of us, the universal us. So how do we do that? How do we do both of those things? And at the same time, and all the time? Well, sometimes we will go back and we will reread books that we have read before, or read books that we haven't read before, like Chopra's 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, great book. Eddie Louise Hay book, there's dozens of those. Ernest Holmes' book, as well as Reverend Gary, that is my favorite of Ernest Holmes' book as well, this thing called You. Emerson, not always easy to read, but he has a whole essay on spiritual laws. You go back and read that and see the fatherish person of New Thought, what he thought, and how this all kind of really got into the vernacular of our society. Or you can go to the Golden Rule, or you can go to the Four Noble Truths of the Buddha in Buddhism. All these different ways to tap into the spiritual laws. But how many spiritual laws are there? I looked around And I found different books that say different things. I mentioned Chopra's 7 spiritual laws of success. I also found one that had 33 spiritual laws, 4, one just got it down to 4, 11. There was one I found that was 105. Imagine having to learn 105 spiritual laws that you have to repeat because you're a minister. Remember that. One spiritual law. Well, today I'm going to talk about the power of 10. 10 spiritual laws that you may recognize. But let me talk about the power of 10 first. Now, the Roman numeral for 10, everybody probably knows, is X. And X, if you look at it carefully, is 2 5s. 2 V's. And V's are 5 in the Roman numeral. So isn't that interesting? I never really thought of that. So 2 V's, which is 5, makes an X, which is 10. The length of an adult hand is usually 1/10 of your height. Sort of like 10 hands, like you do with horses, huh? Most humans have 10 toes and 10 fingers. There are 10 vowels in the Korean alphabet. How many we have? 10, wow. The traditional 10th anniversary gift, of course, is usually tin, was usually tin originally. Now it's diamonds. Proof of inflation. Pythagoras, remember Pythagoras, that theorem that no one remembers? Pythagoras and his gang considered 10 to be the most sacred number. And they actually use that word, the most sacred number. Because 10, listen to this, is 1, and 1 stands for existence, plus 2, 2 stands for creation, plus 3, 3 stands for life, plus 4, meaning the 4 elements, air, earth, fire, and water. The Pythagoreans believed that 10 was the greatest of all numbers because it grasps all arithmetic proportions. And when you joined, I read, when you joined the Pythagoras Club, or whatever they called their gatherings, you did it on the power of 10. I couldn't find the exact thing you had to say, but it had to do with 10. The Richter scale, of course, is based on the number 10. 10% of the world is left-handed. Left-handed people, yay, okay, great. Crabs have 10 legs. So if you have a whole crab, you've gone through 10 legs. In China, the number 10 means perfection. In basketball, the top of the hoop is 10 feet from the ground. A divine number in numerology, 10 means a return to unity, the fusion of being and non-being. And I love this. I'm not into numerology that much, but I love this idea. The fusion of being and non-being, it denotes a completion of a cycle. So when you reach 10, like they say that when you rehearse 10,000 times or you practice 10,000 times, you become proficient at whatever it is you're doing. So there, again, is the power of 10. 10, of course, is the highest score in the Olympics, and there used to be a collection of college athletic teams called the Big Ten, right? They were colleges and universities. They were considered the Big Ten. Now the Big Ten are 14, so I don't know what's happened there. Oh, here's a good one. There's 10 letters on what is called the Snellen. Sounds like a Jerry Lewis word. The Snellen reading chart. That chart that you read when you go to the eye doctor or you go get your license renewed, that is called the Snellen chart. There are actually 10 different letters there. Interstate 10, one of the only coastal highways that goes from coast to coast, Florida to California, Interstate 10. Now I want to do a few religious ones. Sikhism, which is actually called Sikhism, but Sikhism was founded by Guru Nanak in 1480. He lived from 1469 to 1539, so probably in the late 1400s in North India. They believe the Word of God came through the 10 gurus. Here's that number 10 again. A series of rituals, poems, hymns, and the Punjabi language came through these 10 gurus. The final of the 10 guru was Guru Gobind Singh, and he finished his work approximately 1700. So they have kind of stopped from there. In the Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism, now Kabbalah means to receive, the tree of life, or the 10 Sephirot, are the fundamental forces in the universe. Now the Kabbalists seek to receive the knowledge of God through these 10 Sephirot. And the first of the 3 deal with the mind, the next 3 deal with the emotion, the third group deals with how it is acted upon. And the final one is manifestation. So they kind of have their own version of the circle, if any of you studied the circle that we have in religious science. Hinduism teaches that the god Vishnu will be reincarnated 10 times. Vishnu has been reincarnated 9 times so far. 1 more left. The last incarnation was the Buddha. And the final time is expected that it's called the Kalki time. It's expected that the person bringing this in will be arriving on a white horse at the end of the Kali Yuga, they call it, and that the Kalki will destroy all evil and a new age will begin. What does that sound like? Any apocalyptic ideas there? Going to come in on a white horse, all evil will be destroyed, and a new age will begin. In the Bible, the number 10 is used 242 times, and that's what I've been doing all week, counting them. For example, 10 plagues. If you go into the New Testament, Yeshua healed 10 lepers. I guess he was tired after 10 lepers. The tithing number, of course, is 10% that you find in Leviticus and is talked about a little bit in Malachi. That is 10%. That's what my agent takes as well. Now, the biggest of the big 10 in the scriptures, in the Holy Scriptures, in the Bible, comes in the Old Testament. And that is, of course, the tablets that Charlton Heston brought down from Mount Sinai. Now, you know, some of you probably know, it was 15 originally, but according to the historian Mel Brooks, one of the tablets was dropped, so it only became 10. So that's good for us. In Joshua 7, it says, "Be strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do according to all the laws which Moses, my servant, has commanded you. Turn not from it the right hand or to the left, that you may succeed wherever you go." So what are we going to talk about? What are we going to rediscover today? We're going to talk about the powerful laws that is called commonly the 10 Commandments. Now, I don't think you're going to find anywhere in the Bible that it actually says 10 Commandments. I know Charlton Heston said these are the 10 Commandments, but I couldn't find anywhere that actually said 10 Commandments. They are spiritual laws. They came from spirit. You know, in the book talks about the finger of God and all that kind of stuff. In Hebrew, it is called the Aseret HaDebrot, which means 10 statements or utterances. The 10 utterances of spirit. It is a decalogue. It has 10 words. And like I said, it never actually says the 10 Commandments. Now, the first one, we're going to go through them. The first one is, "I am the Lord God of you." Now, I'm not going to say it like we usually hear it or we usually read it, because I'm kind of taking it from the Hebrew. And in the Hebrew, it's kind of transliterated to, "I am the Lord God of you." Now, listen to that part, God of you. Not God over you, God of you. It's a relationship. I am the God of you. And if it is the God, or if it is the Spirit, or if it's the divine intelligence of each and every one of us, then we are of it. because there can't be just a one-way situation there. So that's something to remember. So the image of the I am, because if you remember earlier, up there on Mount Sinai, the Spirit said, I am that I am. And the likeness of that creative power, because we already know that is a creative power, created everything, and I talked about it weeks ago when I talked about the Big Bang and how that matches the Genesis story, actually. So when the first commandment says, I am the Lord God of you, remember that it is God of you, and there is a connection, and there is a oneness. Now we go to the second one, and it says, not have, shall to you gods other beside my face. So, when I read that, I thought, well, what's he talking about? Face. What's it talking about, face? He, meaning the person who wrote the Bible, because you know some guy went, so here's a story we could tell. So what's the other face? What's the opposite of the other God, or the otherness of God? What would that be? And I thought about that, and I said, so what's the opposite of infinite? Well, Spirit's not that. The presence is not that. What's the opposite of unconditional love? Well, that's not that. What's the opposite of non-judgment? What's the opposite of wisdom, intelligence, perfection, wholeness, completeness? What's the opposite of that? It's saying, the Ten Commandments is saying, this Spirit that is in us, of us, is infinite, is love, is non-judgment, is wisdom. So don't have anything opposite of that in your life, because that is not of Spirit. That is not vibrating at the speed of the divine. We don't want that in our lives. Now we go to the third one. Not you shall take the name God of you for vanity. Not in vain, but for vanity. God damn it, I forgot what I was going to say. So I want to show you the word vanity in Hebrew is sheva, which actually means empty or false. Not you shall take the name God of you for falseness, for emptiness. So it's saying that we should never invoke its name in a thoughtless, careless, or stormy manner. That does not mean cursing. Curse all you want. God doesn't care. God's not like you and me and gets insulted. That's BS. But we should never invoke its name. And its name doesn't mean that you say Spirit, or you say divine, or you say God, or you say Ringo Starr. It doesn't matter what you call it, and it doesn't matter if you use any word that is connected to it, Adonai, whatever. Because God is of you. So anytime you speak of yourself intentionally, in an empty or false way, that's what it's talking about. We call upon our powers intentionally. We're actually invoking that we recognize and unify with first cause, with God, with the divine intelligence, etc., that highest power that we tapped into during the meditation. And that the universe manifests itself through us, so that when we speak of anything that is of emptiness, of falseness, we are speaking against our highest self. So I ask you to think about what it is you're putting after the I am. I am this. And if it's against who you truly are, if it's against the divinity that is in you, then number 3, you're going against number 3 here. Number 4, remember Sabbath, keep it holy. So remember, in Hebrew, the word that is usually translated to remember actually means actively focusing. Not just like some thing that came up. But actively focusing. That's like when I talk about prayer, I talk about being intentional and purposeful, not just saying words. Intention and purpose. So remember, actively focus on the Sabbath. Now, the word Sabbath or Shabbat in Hebrew actually means to cease or rest. Now, there is a part in Deuteronomy, I believe, that kind of expands on this and talks about the seventh day and all that kind of stuff. But it's actually talking about, remember, actively focus on ceasing, on stopping, on slowing down, and resting to keep it holy, to keep things sacred. Because when we're tired and grumpy and there's that distress in our life, we are not in a sacred place. We want to be actively focusing the mind and body on rest, relaxation, and mindfulness. I'm not saying you have to set apart a whole day. Some weeks we can't set apart a whole day to rest. But we can set apart moments. We can set apart blocks of time to focus and honor ourselves and honor the divinity, honor the God of us, the God that is in us, the power that is in us. We can sit and take a moment and breathe, breath, big spiritual practice, and breathe and listen and be aware, and or meditate, and or do spiritual treatment or affirmative prayer, and rest. Rest our minds, which rests our bodies. Rest our hearts, which rests our souls. Number 5, have a deep and heartfelt honor to the father of you and the mother of you. That tends to talk about our parents. And honoring our parents doesn't have anything necessarily to do with liking them. And I want to make sure we bring that out. But honoring the creation that is you, that came through them, whoever they are. And also honoring the parent of all of us, which is the source and substance of all of us, which is God, divine intelligence, which is that presence, that spirit. So that's what we want to honor. We want to remember to honor that power that is within each and every one of us. So these first 5 are about recognizing and unifying with which we individualize, that we represent. And it only says to respect the presence within and the power that individualize is in each and every one of us. So now I want to go to the next 5. And also to remember to reconnect and reboot. So we're recognizing, we're unifying, we're honoring that sacredness that is within each and every one of us. We are not using the power within us to make our lives less sacred than it is, by our words, by our thoughts, by our beliefs, and we have control over them. And to take a rest, to reboot every once in a while, to reconnect every once in a while. Next 5, number 6, not you shall murder. Not you shall murder. Now that has to do with not just life physically, but murdering the life that is within you. And the way we do that, and other people's lives, not just physically, but anytime we shame, blame, guilt, gossip about somebody, we're just killing them a little bit. Killing their soul a little bit, so to speak. You may not be touching them physically at all. It may have nothing to do with them physically, but when we play those games, sometimes out of anger, sometimes out of cattiness, there's all kinds of reasons of shame, blame, and gossip. It's just like taking a piece of paper and just ripping a little. Some 10,000 knife pokes, 10,000 knife slices. The Pirkei Avot, which is the ethics of the father, says the evil tongue slays 3 persons: the utterer of the evil, the listener, and the one spoken about. And Yeshua also linked the ideas of our words and our attitudes with having a little bit of murder, a little bit of those 10,000 cuts. In Matthew, where it is said, he said, "Know you not that whatever enters the mouth passes into the belly, and from there is ejected through the intestines? But that which proceeds from the mouth comes from the heart. And that is what defiles man, woman, child. For from the heart comes our evil thoughts, adultery, murder, theft, false testimony. These are the things that defile a person." 7, no shall you commit adultery. Now the Hebrew word is na'ap, and interestingly enough, adultery in the Bible was mostly talking about men, so women have it. But we want to think of adultery a little more deeper than the stepping out of your marriage vows things. It's a sacrilege because it violates a sworn promise. And we make these sworn promises in many ways. When we speak ill of ourselves, we are stepping away from the sworn promise of living our greatest life, of stepping out of that highest self. And we're going to do that every once in a while. And it's really no big deal every once in a while, because you can always turn back. But it is an adultery of sorts. It's a lie. It's a theft. Now 8, 9, and 10 I kind of put together. 8, 9, and 10 is no shall you steal, no shall you bear false witness, or no shall you covet. Now that's not just theft as in, okay? That is theft that we do to ourselves. When we lie about ourselves, when we step away from knowing that all are one, we are stealing. We are taking away our highest self. There is a word called emet in Hebrew. It is the opposite of lying. It is called emet. It is truth. Now, the interesting thing about this word emet, this word truth, is that the consonants and vowels in the word emet are the first, the middle, and the final letters in Hebrew. So truth encompasses all. So lying about yourself, or lying about others, or actually physically stealing something, that is living opposite of your truth. Now, coveting is an ego thing. Like theft, theft's an ego thing. Theft is taking because you don't feel like you have. You don't have confidence that you vibrate at the speed of the divine, that you reveal the divinity in you, and so you have to take somebody else's thing. Because your whole consciousness is full of lack and limitation. I got to take their job, I got to take their car, whatever. But it's not just physical things, it's just taking away anything that belongs to anybody else. It's kind of a template of not what to do. Don't covet, don't take away, because then you're living in lack and limitation. You can bring it on to yourself. You can bring it on for yourself. All you have to do is believe it. All you have to do is match those thoughts and feelings, which then comes into your beliefs, which then comes out and manifests itself, demonstrates itself into your life. So all this section is about not taking, because there's no reason to take, because that is a lack of consciousness. It's about giving yourself to the I am, developing a have consciousness, knowing that what's available, the source and substance of our supply, is not our jobs, is not our trust fund if we have one, is not our savings account that we have, or our 401ks, or any of our investments. The source and substance of manifesting whatever it is in our lives is the divine, is that power that is within us. And infinite amounts are available everywhere. So let's not poo-poo or discount these, what are called the Ten Commandments. The Hebrew word for commandment is in Deuteronomy, and it actually means a directive, not a commandment like do this, or you're going to that nasty place. It's a directive. It's a landmark for guidance. It's a mitzvah, actually, if you've heard that word. Mitzvah means commandment. But mitzvah also means a directive, a landmark, a direction for one's journey. When a boy or girl at 13 have their bar mitzvah in the Jewish tradition, they are putting themselves on the path of adulthood. It has nothing to do with how old they are as much or how mature they are physically or emotionally. It has to do with spiritually putting them on the path to adulthood, to fullness, being apart from their parents. These are directions, these 10 Commandments. These are directions to guide us on our journey to manifesting our best life. And sometimes we have to go back and remember that. Sometimes we gossip. Sometimes we tell lies, mostly to ourselves, in this community, because I know you won't. And when we do, then we have to remember that those things that Charlton Heston brought down from Mount Sinai, we have to go back to those guideposts, to that template of life. There are ethics to be guided by, yes, but more, it is something to recenter us, to reboot us, to bring us back to our hearts, minds, and beliefs, to cleanse us of the dis-ease and the distress and the disconnection and the disarray and anything that's dissing us. You know? We diss us, other people diss us, but we can always turn away from the other people. Sometimes it's not as easy to turn away from our own heads. So then we can go back and we can rediscover what those tablets said. Ernest Holmes tells us that the transformation takes place here. You don't have to wonder if it will take place out there. The world will come when enough of us see through the night into the celestial light that shineth more and more into the perfect day. In Joshua 8, it said, "This book of the law shall not depart out of our mouth, but you shall meditate thereon day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written therein, for then you shall succeed and prosper." I want us to stop flirting with principle. And stop flirting with that power of 10, mostly because it seems to come from some old stuff. But remember, a lot of this philosophy comes from ancient wisdom too. It's kind of cool and hip to regurgitate Eastern philosophies because it seems so much closer to our philosophy of New Thought and religious science and what Ernest Holmes and all those men and women taught us. But this ancient wisdom, even in that, God forbid, Bible thing, can teach us when we rediscover what it really is talking about. Dr. Bitzer, who was the first minister I had contact with in this philosophy, said, "Never sacrifice principle, even for a special occasion. When we sacrifice principle, we are sacrificing our truth." So let's not look out in the outside for anything. Let's look inside. That is what those tablets are telling us, to look inside. Because when we look inside, when we vibrate at the speed of divine, when we reveal the divinity that is within us, when we sit and reboot every once in a while, once a day, twice a day, whatever's going to make it for you, then we know we're connected. Then we don't have to have lack of limitation consciousness. We don't have to take, lie, shame, gossip, do 10,000 cuts to people we know and don't know. We don't need any of that in our lives. And if we sneak back in somehow, even in the smallest way, we can remember those tablets and step back into our hearts. So I ask you to rediscover your true potential by stepping into remembering and living the power of 10. Thank you so much. Namaste.